As men, especially as doctors, sometimes we hyper-focus on our career, neglecting other facets of our lives. But that is about to change. This is Dads Before Doctors. Some physicians claim their family is their top priority, but their lives tell a very different story. We'll help each other become family men who are doctors rather than doctors who have families. If it's health, wealth and legacy, emotional well-being, parenting, professional goals, or marriage, we're talking about it. Thanks for listening, and make sure to subscribe. This is Dads Before Doctors, and this is your host, Adam Broussard, MD.
All right, welcome back to Dads Before Doctors podcast. Today we have Kirk Martin with Celebrate Calm Parenting. Welcome, Kurt. I'm excited to have a chat with you today.
Hey, Adam, good to be here.
Can you just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
So what we mainly specialize is in those strong-willed kids, the kids who challenge you over everything, who think they know everything, and for whom consequences don't work. Right. So the traditional parenting things that you're trying for, say, your compliant kids tend to backfire on the strong-willed child. And you spend all of your time trying to change them. And in the end, everybody ends up frustrated. So we have a now 28-year-old son who kind of came out of the womb with boxing gloves on. And I was in the corporate world, as an executive, marketing. And my son kind of drove me out of that, pursuing this not as a business. It was just a side passion for helping the kids who kind of don't fit in, the more entrepreneurial kids who are really smart but don't like school. So we ended up, instead of being in an office, now I host a podcast and we talk about parenting stuff. But that it was never the plan, which is probably why it worked out so well. So.
Exactly. That always seems to be, how things happen is, things that you develop that passion for or that need for, even that just kind of when it's more genuine. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your growing up and your dad.
So my dad was career military. So in our home, he was known as the Colonel. So as you can tell, it was a lot of fun growing up. So he had 4 boys. And, he just did the traditional my way or the highway approach, yelling, screaming, intimidation, because that's just what he knew, right? Like he was born, he was 10 when the Great Depression hit. He served in World War II. He was an old guy. I've been through a lot. So that's what I knew. So when I became a dad and my brothers became dads, that's what we did. We come home from work, there's Legos all over the floor. Why can't you pick up your Legos? Right? And start yelling. And we couldn't look, none of my brothers, we weren't like ogres. We weren't like bad guys. We just couldn't control ourselves. And it was that thing. And we always, as dads, in some ways we feel justified, right? Like, hey, if you can't pick up your Legos when you're 6, how are you going to be disciplined and successful when you're 36, right? We project out into the future. And I think also, Adam, we also romanticize our childhood about how awesome we were in discipline. We were dopes.
What do you mean? We were perfect.
Yeah, we were dopes. We got away with a lot more stuff than our kids do because our parents didn't even see half the stuff that we did, right? Like I'm 56, so I'm older than you, but we had all this time out in our neighborhood. There were no adults watching what we did. We did all kinds of mischievous stuff. It's just that nobody noticed. And like you've got 2 young kids, everything about your kids. You're going to know their strengths, their weaknesses. You're going to be super involved in their lives. And our parents weren't that involved. So it was a blessing and a curse because we got away with stuff, but we also had space to make some bad decisions and learn from it. And we also got to touch that proverbial hot stove and figure life out for ourselves without our too high achieving parents micromanaging our lives, right? And that's
Absolutely.
right. Yeah, I mean, in our sphere of people we're talking about, you're all high achieving dads. So you know what it takes to be successful in life. And so it's going to work against you at times because you're going to want to micromanage your kids. And many of them will reject that and kind of rebel against that.
And, unfortunately, this day and time, you have a lot of other voices, coming at those kids. So it just makes it even more important to teach them how to, manage some of that on their own, because you're as much as we are around right now, like you're not around 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And you can't compete with TikTok.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, we're competing against, TikTok, Facebook, their friends, they're in constant, bombardment of all these other voices and noise outside. So, you're not there with them all the time to make those decisions. So, you have to teach them.
So teaching them how, giving them space to learn, being that guy, that dad that your kids want to come to and can come to take advantage of your wisdom in life. But it's kind of, with a strong-willed child especially, it's a little opposite. The more you try to force your way on them, the more they tend to resist it. And so it's more, for our way of thinking, it's more leading and drawing these kids so they want to ask for your wisdom, or so they actually just listen to you and don't tune you out, right? So yeah, that's good perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So was there any particular, moment or anything that happened that made you start the search to, figure out how to parent strong-willed kids? Or
yeah, I think it was with my son. I mean, I was basically a good dad, right? I was a good dad, but I was finding myself trying to control and change his behavior all the time. And everything he did just irritated me. And I finally had the realization of there's only one person in life that I can control, and that's myself. And as I began controlling myself and my own emotions, I found his behavior changed even more. And I found that he wasn't coming to me, he was coming to my wife for everything. And I was like, wait, why isn't he coming to me? Come on, I'm his dad. I know all these things. And she's like, would you come to you with anything? Like, no matter what he does, it's never good enough for you. You're always on him. You're always lecturing. You're always saying, hey, nice job, Casey, but. And so it was a realization of, I loved my son. I wanted to be close to him, but inadvertently, I was actually driving him away from me. And I didn't want that. So that was the start of the personal part. And then so I started volunteering time in his classroom because he struggled in school. I found that I was really good with all the misfit kids. And so I had this idea, and I told my wife, I was like, I've had this great idea. Why don't we take like 10, 12, 15 strong-willed kids on the spectrum, and invite them into our house? And we'll have these camps. We'll just call it Lego camp, because no kid wants to come to social skills camp. So we called it Lego camp. Well, all the kids we worked with loved Legos. And so we just did this just as a mission, just because we wanted to. And all of a sudden, people were like dropping their weird little kids off at our house. They didn't even know us. I wasn't even trained in this. My wife's a therapist. And I was like, yeah, they're going to be fine. We're going to build with Legos. I'm going to teach them how to control their emotions. It'll be good. Come back in an hour. And it was the weirdest thing. It spread. And so then I started charging money for it, because I had to have some boundaries around it. Otherwise, people were like dropping kids off at our house at random hours, almost like, here, work with my kid. And before long, I kind of worked my way out of my regular job, because we just knew there was a demand for it. So yeah, it was kind of a cool thing. I wouldn't want to do it again, though. I do not have that energy for 15 7 and 12-year-olds running around my house. So
yeah, no doubt. Two's enough for me right now.
2 is more than enough.
So how do you, de-escalate some of these intense situations with these strong-willed kids?
Okay, I'll do a situation that's pretty common in our homes, and one of my biggest triggers. And a quick little tool in case someone tunes out. What I learned is I would identify my triggers, what irritates me. And then, like a good engineer, like a good dude, I would diagram it. So one of my big triggers is when my son was running late, because my dad was career military. So if you're not 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. So he would dawdle in the morning. I was like, oh, Casey, come on, Casey, get your butt downstairs, move it. And what I found is the more that my anxiety dumped on him, the slower he went. And so I discovered, okay, when my son is running late and dawdling, I tend to react by pushing and jumping and yelling. The result is he goes slower, I get more upset, and then it escalates. So the little trick I give some dads is do the opposite of what you normally do, because what I'm doing right now isn't working. And I deal with a lot of dads who are like, yeah, but if I just keep doing this, and I'm like, if you keep doing your my way or the highway approach, you won't even have a family, because your wife is going to leave you because she doesn't want to manage your emotions. And she's tired of being married to a successful 40-year-old who acts like a 4-year-old when things don't go his way, right? That's kind of what we are at times, right? We run a big company, but we can't handle when there are Legos on the floor. And so I began doing the opposite. So when he was running late or he was going slowly, I'd actually go and I'd sit and I'd connect with him for like 15 seconds. I'd ask him about something he was interested in. And I'd say, okay, that's pretty cool. Listen, meet me in the car. I want to finish this discussion. And I was drawing and leading. And because I was in control of myself, there was a certain amount where he wanted to come with me. But when I'm barking and I'm in a hurry like this, all he knew was, Dad, you're going to lose it. You're going to flip people off in traffic. I just don't want to be near you when you're like that. And the analogy I use for men is this: men in every sphere of life respect other men who are calm and cool under pressure, right? In the middle of a war, we don't want our platoon captain saying, oh my gosh, they're shooting at us. Like, nobody's following that dude. We don't want our quarterback of our team, when we're losing by 2 touchdowns, saying, you don't know what route to run. You keep fumbling the ball. Let's go score. Nobody's following that guy. The reason Tom Brady wins so much, even if he cheated for 3 of the Super Bowls, he's got 4 legit ones, right? It's because he's calm and cool under pressure. And so I like that model of talk to your strong-willed kids like you do to people at the office. I mean, you're a doctor, so if you're in I assume in an emergency room, in an ER situation, if the doctor's freaking out, everybody's freaking out, right? So you lead by your example.
Yeah, I'm an anesthesiologist, so that's who when there's a situation in the operating room, they're looking at me, and it's amazing how you can have that calm, systematic like behavior at work, and then you step on a Lego and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, try it next time you're administering, your anesthesia. Just say like, I don't know what dose I was supposed to give, right? And then watch everybody freak out.
Absolutely.
Well, so I'll give you an example of common one. My son's in the kitchen yelling at my wife because he got frustrated. He's got anxiety, whatever it is, doesn't matter. He's yelling at my wife. Typical response from me was to march in. Casey, how many times have I told you, you don't yell at your mother? You keep that up, you're going to lose everything you own. Go to your room right now. And so I would come in, and in some ways I would escalate things. And I knew at that moment I could, when you can look at your child, he's gone or she's gone. Like, emotionally, they're just done. Faces are all red. And we do those things as dad. You don't keep it up, young man. One more word And one time my son looked at me and he said, "Word." And I was like, "You little jerk, you know what you're doing." But that was my issue, right? And so I would do, or we do this one, keep it up. You already lost your video games for 1 week. You want to make it 2. And the strong-willed child would say, "Why don't we just make it 4 weeks?" Because they know that you rely on video games to keep them occupied. Mm-hmm. So I would send him to his room. I would escalate. And there's no blame or guilt in anything we do. I'm pretty hard on dads because I'm a guy. And it's not guilt. I just want us to own our stuff, right? Because we say this to our kids: you need to be responsible for your behavior, while we're screaming at them. And yet we're not responsible for our own.
Exactly. And we're telling them to control their emotions and we can't control ours.
And while we're screaming at them to do it. So was this: I need you to behave, because if you don't behave and do exactly what I tell you to do, I'm not sure I can behave, and you do not want to see me angry, right? It was a really kind of twisted thing. So so let's redo that situation. So one of our phrases when kids are upset is motion changes emotion. So I like using movement, because just saying, "Young man, we need to talk about your attitude right now," it never works. No kid's can be like, "Of course, Dad, I want to hear all your wisdom. Why don't you point out all the things I'm doing wrong? Can't wait." Like, it just escalates. So a little bit of movement. So imagine I come in the kitchen with some intensity. I say, "Hey, I can tell you're frustrated. Listen, I've got a football. I'm going to go out in the backyard. When you're ready, if you want to come play catch, love to help you out with this." Another option: walk in. "Hey, I can tell you're frustrated. Listen, I'm going to go dump some Legos out on the floor. When you're ready, if you want to come in, I'll build a really cool spaceship with you." So the idea is I'm not disciplining right away while everybody's still upset. I'm calming things down by giving him some movement, inviting him in to do a specific activity: play catch, build with Legos, color, do push-ups, play basketball, whatever kids like to do. And the idea is when they're upset, they're out of control. And we try to talk to them. Talking to an upset person just makes people more upset. And even that really sweet tone that you may use, or maybe your wife use, "Oh, honey, it's okay," that's even more infuriating. Absolutely. Right? And that's, because what they want to hear is, "Man, if I were you, I'd be frustrated too." Like, that's what we all want to hear when we're upset. We don't want to be told, "Oh, you're just, Adam, there's no need to be upset." You're like, "Yeah, there is." And so I acknowledge that with some intensity, but then I give the child something to do that he kind of feels in control of, and it's physical. That helps de-escalate. Now we're building with Legos. We're playing with catch. Now we can discipline and get to, "Hey, that thing happening in the kitchen with your mom, look, I know you know that's doesn't work in my home. I know you know it's wrong. And I also know when you yell at your mom, hit your sister, lie, whatever your child does, you're just going to get dire consequences." So even in the discipline mode, it's talking to them like adults. Mm-hmm. "Hey, I heard you yelling at your mom. You know it's wrong. What's going on?" And one of my favorite phrases is, "I'm curious." So, Case, I'm curious because you were just doing something that you know is wrong and that will hurt you. And you keep doing it. So I'm curious, what's going on that's leading to or driving that behavior? Because I'm your dad, I've got wisdom, I've got some life experience. I bet I can help you with that so you don't keep losing all your stuff, right? So it's a little bit of a twist from, "I'm the authoritarian parent whose job is to correct my children every time they do something wrong," right? To, "No, I'm the calm, confident leader of my home who's a problem solver, who when I see something going on with my kids, instead of reacting and freaking out, I do like I do at my regular job, which isn't to join the drama. It's to say something's going on in that department. It's not working out well. So how can I bring my leadership skills to problem solve to make it better?" And sometimes for guys, Adam, that's a helpful, like, it's go home and treat your kids like you would treat the situation at the office. Because at the office, we don't freak that much.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge point, because I mean, you and even treating them how you would want to, be treated. Like when you're angry about something, you don't want someone to necessarily to comfort you, like you mentioned. Like you want someone else to be like, yeah, that would piss me off too.
Yeah.
Like just thinking about treating your kid the same way is a huge change than how we typically parent our kids.
Well, you've got young ones, right? So, okay, so here's an example. I'm doing a phone consultation. The mom's like, my son's so particular. And he was making a paper airplane and throwing it, and it didn't fly right. So he crumpled it up and he's like, this is stupid. I'm stupid. And I was like, Mom, what'd you do? The typical, like, oh, honey, that was a good airplane. She said, yeah. And I was like, that's infuriating. It wasn't a good airplane, right? Because it didn't fly. And the better thing to say was, man, you just spent a lot of time trying to make that airplane and it didn't fly. If I were you, I'd be frustrated too. Now, what I didn't say is, if I were you, I'd punch a hole in the wall. I'd hit your sister. I'd hit me. So of course, it's normalizing some things. Of course, you're frustrated right now. Okay, so what are we going to do with our frustration? Because hitting your sister, yelling at me, well, that's not going to work in this home. But I bet we could do something physical. Adam, one of my favorite things I used to do at live workshops was a demonstration of dad comes home from work. And I encourage the dads to try this. You come home from work, or some of you out of your home office, which is horrible for some of you because you hear your kids all day. You come out, you say, frustrating day at work. Traffic was backed up. I just had a bad day. I'm PO'd. I'm frustrated. Anybody want to do some push-ups with me? And you get down on the ground and do 10 push-ups. If you have little kids, now your little kids will probably climb on your back because they're really young. But most little kids, they want to do what their dad does. And what they start to learn is, when my dad has a bad day, when my dad is disappointed, he does push-ups instead of just yelling and getting upset. And now I'm slowly starting to teach the child being disappointed, angry, and frustrated is part of life. But instead of lashing out, I do my push-ups. I do something physical. I listen to music. I go for a walk, whatever it is that is our calming routine. And that's a pretty cool, I just like that. I will mention this because, is this primarily a dad's or only a dad's podcast?
Primarily, physician dads, high achieving dads.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So this is something I say to dads in private, which is, if you want your wife, because most men are like, we don't have sex enough after we've been married. Well, it's partly because you can't control yourself, and your wife feels like she has 2 children and then she married one, right? And I guarantee you, if you start coming home from work and instead of escalating things with that child that she loves more than you, because our wives are always going to choose our kids over you, right? If you do that, like I do that analogy, like that example of like dad outside playing catch instead of yelling at the kid. When your wife looks at you out in the backyard and you're calming down this strong-willed child instead of escalating things, she will want you more, right? Like that is like an aphrodisiac to a mother watching a dad actually handle the child with some amount of tact and tenderness and problem solving, instead of, now I've got to teach my husband to control himself and my child. Now I'm freaking exhausted and I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Right. So I wanted to talk sometime more and better sex, because then men would actually come to one of our talks.
Absolutely.
And that's one of my primary ways to do it. But it's not meant to be funny. It's just true. Right.
Dropping bombs, getting calm kids and more sex.
Calm kids and more sex. Yes. You calm your kids down so your wife's not emotionally exhausted all the time. Then like that means more than like you bringing home a lot of money, because you can bring home all the money in the world. But if she's got to like manage your emotions and walk on eggshells, she gets adrenal fatigue and she's got no energy and she's going to bed at 9:30 at night. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
No, absolutely. And I think, like you mentioned, like just being able to you identifying your emotions and helping identify your kids' emotions, especially this, young age with my kids are 4 and 1.5, like that's a huge life skill to teach them. And, sometimes we don't identify, like you being able to identify your emotion, like instead of just getting angry at your kids because something bad happened at work, being able to come in and be like, I had a frustrating day and here's how we solve it, I think helps you take a step back too.
Yeah, it's cool. I'll give you one tip for guys. Just do this next week. It'll sound way too simple, but I like simple because you're busy people and it works. Instead of just reacting and starting to walk around and start kind of talking, getting upset, just sit down. It was how I first learned how to control myself. It was every time I get irritated, I'm just going to sit in a chair. I sit in a chair, put my feet up, sit in my chair, cross my legs. It changes the body posture, will change your tone of voice. The body posture. See, when I'm standing over a child and I'm starting to, talk with my hands and my arms and my voice is getting like this, well, it creates a defensive response in the child, right? Because now they're like, uh-oh, how upset is dad going to get? And it cascades. When I sit down, I'm demonstrating I'm in complete control of myself, right? I can handle this. In the previous situation with the rescuing the kid who's yelling at his mom, what I'm demonstrating is I can handle you at your worst, right? When your world is out of control, mine's not. I can deal with this, right? It's like the doctor in the ER. You don't want a doctor in the ER is like, I don't know what to do. There's blood coming out of this patient. We're like, what are we going to, it's like, everybody's going to be like, we're screwed. This guy's going to die, right? And even if you have to fake it, it is, I sit down and it allows you to look at the situation a little more clearly. It gives you a little time so you don't just do that instant reaction. And that alone will, just the sitting down thing will start this process and you'll be like, oh, my body posture plays a huge role. I mean, think of this. If you walk into the living room and you see your wife with her hands on her hips, looking at your teenage daughter, she's not saying, honey, I'm really proud of you. There's a power struggle and it just escalates things. So, if you're listening to this next week, we need to change our entire parenting style. No, just this next week, focus on controlling your own emotions, sit down, use that even matter-of-fact voice, and just observe how your child responds differently to that. And I think what you'll find, for me as a guy, I like doing things that work. And what I saw was, he responds completely differently to me when I do that. So why wouldn't I just keep doing that? And it's kind of a cool process.
Yeah, absolutely. So when these things don't work, like what are the suggestions? It sounds like consequences. We talked about earlier about taking away video games or whatever. Like a strong-willed kid's just gonna try to one-up you and be like, no, we'll take 4 weeks and stuff. What for the kids that consequences don't work, or some of these, or when these things might not work because it's just too out of control? Like, right. What are some suggestions? Sorry.
So think about this conceptually. What we typically do is a child misbehaves, we react to the outward behavior and we take something away. And so in effect, we're kind of punishing the child for failing. And so I changed my prism to, okay, I know my child struggles in this particular area. Let's say doing schoolwork, right? Which many of our kids, you don't have to worry about it yet with them that young, but eventually you will, and it'll be awful if they're a strong-willed kid. So it's like either you do your homework or no screens. Well, the part that we're missing is I know that my son struggles in school. He struggles with focusing on things he doesn't care about, because most kids don't have focus issues. because they can focus for hours at a time playing Minecraft or video games or anything they're interested in. So it's a motivation issue, and it's what they care about. But so if I know my child struggles in a certain area, I want to give them tools to succeed. So just think, if you're at a corporate office and you have an employee who's not doing well, just walking by his cubicle saying, if you don't shape up, you're going to be out of a job. Well, that didn't really give him the skills to do better. You would say, hey, you have a weakness in this area. Let me send you to some training so that you can get the skills necessary to succeed in this job. So same thing for the kids, say with homework time, it's, look, homework's getting done. I just don't care how you do it. If you want to do your homework standing at the kitchen counter, listening to music while you're eating a snack, because actually it's really, really good for a lot of kids with busy brains, the future entrepreneurs, they need the movement. With little kids, it's going to be, hey, when we review vocabulary words, instead of sitting you at a table and drilling you, right? Because we do that as parents. Let's make learning as unfun as possible. It's, hey, while you're bouncing on an exercise ball or jumping on the trampoline, why don't I quiz you on your vocabulary words? Well, now we use the tool, which is movement, because movement does a lot of things because it creates rhythm and it actually helps the brain process a little bit. So with discipline, what I like to go to is discipline means to teach. So with little kids, you've got really young ones, I will often do a thing, we call it rewind and replay. So let's say, one of your kids is jumping on the sofa. Well, it's clearly not cool to jump on the sofa, right? But I also normalize it, like, don't get freaked out. It's like, why wouldn't a kid jump on the sofa, Absolutely. Right? I mean,
we've already had an ER visit for that.
yeah, exactly. It's like if there's a puddle, every parent, don't splash in the puddle. Well, of course they're going to get in the puddle. Like, I encourage you, chill a little bit when you have little kids, because their job is literally to ruin your agenda, to make messes, and to explore and to get into everything. And parents are like, well, I just need a discipline. It's like, he's 4. His job, like, I asked a guy once, he's a big business guy, and was like, write a job description for your 4-year-old. Is it to be highly disciplined with great vision for the future? Or is a 4-year-old's job description to literally explore everything that he sees around him and touch and make messes? That's their job description at that age. They have plenty of time to be miserable like us as adults. So where was I on it? Where was I going on it, Adam? Now I forgot. The kid on the sofa. So couple options. One is when I walk in the room, I'm not doing that real sweet tone. Hey, buddy, we don't jump on the sofa. There's springs. You don't need all the extra talking. When I walk in, hey, jumping on a sofa, not happening in my home. Like, even matter of fact tone. But then I transition with energy to, but I love your energy. If you want to come help me stir the soup, get this jar, top off this jar. If you want to come help me walk the dog, man, I could really use your help. So for younger kids, big principle is whenever you say no to something inappropriate, you have to say yes to something appropriate. Because you've got 2 little kids. You and your wife are going to spend your entire day saying, no, stop, get your hands out of that, put that down, don't do it. So you have to reorient to giving them missions, making things harder for them. I love, because a lot of our kids have sensory issues. They like sensory pressure. So like having an obstacle course in the basement or the backyard where you hide stuff like food and they have to go find it in order to eat. Kids, boys especially, love that stuff. If you just threw some mac and cheese in your backyard and told the boys, like, hey, go eat, they would be on their hands and knees eating the mac and cheese off the grass and be perfectly happy. And then all your neighbors would be like, I thought they were doctors. So, but I do a lot of action steps, and I tend to give tools. I show kids how to do it differently. It takes a little bit more time up front, but it saves that endless that endless routine of, if you don't do X, here's your consequence. And when your kids are older and they have screens, your life will be dominated by this. Dad, can I have the screens back? Can I have my video games back? Is it time yet? Do I get them back yet? Nope, 2 more days. Dad, can I get them back today? It's been another day. Can I have them back? And it becomes endless, and you're not really teaching them anything. You're just taking stuff away, and it doesn't really change behavior. So consequences are fine, but I want to go one step further to show them actually how to be successful.
Probably punishing yourself more than them sometimes with the consequences.
Yes, absolutely.
I think a lot of schools are starting to pick up with this. My older son's school, it's an all boys school, and it's very obvious. Like kind of what you mentioned, like they have different stations and different they have balls, or they have beanbag chairs to go sit in to read, and like allowing them to be boys, like, and be high energy versus just like sitting there and getting lectured at and stuff like that. Do you see schools making some of that, those changes, or do you help schools with some of that?
Yeah, we do a lot of teacher training. And so it's the same thing. So here's a good example. Let's say I walk in, I'm in first grade, third grade, doesn't matter. And I see a kid and his legs are just bouncing all over the place. I don't need to know a diagnosis, right? I don't need to know, like, it's clear that he has ADHD. It doesn't matter to me. All I know is that kid probably needs to move. And he's not sitting still for 45 minutes in my class. Well, if we just wait a little while, he'll get up, walk around class, talk to people, and then I'll have to say, hey, look at me. 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Look, right? And then we'll take away recess, which hurts us as well. But instead, what I would do is go to that kid and say, dude, I really need your help. Listen, when I'm teaching in class, my mouth gets dry. I need water. And I know you need to move. So you and I are going to have a secret signal. When I touch my nose like that, pull on my ear, here's what I want you to do. You get up out of your seat, you come up to my desk, you grab my water bottle, take it to the back of the room, refill it, bring it back up, sit it on my desk, and then you sit down. You don't get to talk to anybody. You're not going to irritate anybody. Just going to refill my water bottle. You up for that? Most kids like feeling helpful and doing a specific job. So when I'm sitting in class, so I'm teaching a class, and I notice that one of these busy little boys needs to move, give him the signal. He refills, sits on my desk, and sits down. Couple cool things that happen. One, I get to end that scene with, hey, good job, thank you, right? Affirming. Dads, please affirm your kids for what they're doing well, instead of always picking out what they're not doing, because that'll cause a lot of anger in kids toward their dads. And when they're teenagers, they're going to be like, all you ever did when I was a kid was point out the things that I did wrong, and you never noticed all the good choices I made. So I just got to praise him for that. I gave him a very specific job. It took about 23 seconds to refill that water bottle, and I gave him 23 seconds of appropriate movement within my boundaries. I didn't say, hey, little guy with an ADD brain, run around my classroom if you get bored. I didn't say that. It's concrete. He can hold it. He can refill it. And the term that we would use is, I just created a success. So I'm always giving tools. Hey, here's a job to do. Oh, that would really help me out. So I'm giving them things to do that they're naturally good at doing, because once that kid sits down, he just got some of that movement, but it was within my boundaries. And now I've got him for another 15, 20 minutes, depending how old he is. So yeah, that kind of, I'd encourage you with teachers, don't just go in and say, here's my strong-willed child, good luck. We can't control him at home, but maybe you'll have some luck. I go in with some ideas of, hey, at recess time, I know my son or daughter likes to control games, because most of the kids we work with, they cheat, change the rules of the game, or they quit. So they want to control everything. So at recess, if I give them a specific job to do or mission, it prevents a lot of the bad unstructured time for these kids. So yeah, it's the same at home, at school, tools to succeed.
That's awesome. I think that'll be very helpful to, like you said, keeping these kids moving and on task. And then you've got something to praise them for. that they, those simple words from teacher or parent, that, instead of hearing the no from them, it really is big to just that tiny task that they accomplished and help that adult with.
Yeah. I'd say two things for dads. The big things for dads is, one is that affirming your kids for what they're already doing well is huge. Even at age 28, I have a tremendous amount of power over my 28-year-old because he respects me now, not when he's younger, until I change. But he respects me. So when I tell him something, I can ream him if I want, but I don't have to do it very harshly because he's very sensitive to my correction. So I use it sparingly and very wisely. But he also he wants to hear, hey, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job. It doesn't have to be a long speech. It could be just a little fist bump after work. Like, hey, that's a good choice. Shows me you're growing up. Like, lots of little seeds. And then the other thing I always tell dads is, don't get freaked out about eye contact. Every dad, when you get the dad handbook, when you become a dad, it says that everything your kids do is disrespect towards you. Men we're so sensitive to that. Like, well, he's disrespecting me. I'm like, what are you, a wide receiver in the NFL getting disrespected over everything? You're a grown man. It's a 4-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 13-year-old wasn't happy with something. Don't take it so personally all the time. Be so fragile, right? Like, oh, he disrespected. You're a grown man, right? And so, men, we have this thing. Well, if my son's not looking me in the eyes, then he's not respecting me. And what it usually is one, the only time we look our kids in the eyes sometimes is when we're angry, right? Like, no dad comes home from work. Hey, look at me. You just made a good choice. I'm proud of you. Like, we don't do that. And so I like to reverse that. And then the strong-willed kids and a lot of sensory kids, they think better when they're not looking an adult in the eyes. Like, you'll notice, even if you notice, because we're on Zoom, I close my eyes a lot when I'm recalling things. I look away. It's very hard for me to look at you while thinking of things. And so many of our kids are like that. And that's why I like sitting and doing Legos, playing catch when they're upset. With a teenager who's kind of freaking out, just come in the room and saying, hey, I was headed up to the convenience store, need to grab some gas. If you want to come with me, grab a candy bar, or, I'm going to go stop by Taco Bell, right? Taco Bell's great for like teenagers because you're sitting next to each other in a car. So there's no eye contact. And it's a great way to calm down because now you're sitting and eating these tacos with grass-fed beef now that's in them. It's not, but you can imagine it is. And it just creates an easier way to talk because you're not doing the eye contact. So I just want to save some power struggles for the dads out there with eye contact.
I appreciated that. Yeah, that's definitely a thing that you're like, look at me.
Yeah, look at me. Look at me. I'm talking to you. And I was like, you're scary is what you are. Right. So it's Adam's kind of even with your wife, like with our wives, and not about your wife, our wives, our best talks are when we leash up the dogs and we go for a walk. Mm-hmm. Because now when I'm saying something, I'm not noticing my wife's facial expressions, recognizing her disappointment in what I just said. And we're not reacting to that. We're looking forward and we're noticing things. And the talking is more natural rather than, honey, we need to sit down and have a talk about our relationship. Mm-hmm. I was like, no, we don't. Yeah. But if we can go play catch, honey, and talk about some areas I need to improve, I'll listen to you if we do that. But I'm not going to sit down and have a serious talk about our relationship. But I'll go for a walk with you and talk about it. So same thing in pretty much all relationships.
Yeah. And just changing that environment too, like, I think is huge, that you're not sitting at the kitchen table where all of the struggles are, like getting out and walking the dog, being in nature, being whatever, even the movement, like, with the kids, like it changes the tone completely.
Yeah. It's a cool thing.
So any parting words of advice to busy professionals, doctors that, how to find, the balance, or how to, not bring home their stress from the job and from the hospital. And
I think you can bring home your stress, right? You're going to bring it home. It's just we don't want to dump it on our kids. So this next week, let's do simple things. Let's do the sitting down, change the tone of voice. Imagine that you're the doctor. You are the authoritative leader. Look, as doctors, you are the authoritative leader that a patient is looking to. And if you freak out, your patient's going to be like, what, am I going to die? And you reassure the parent, the patient. And so it's the same thing with your kids. You're just changing hats of now I'm the authoritative leader. I am the parent in my home. And so when the ER is busy, when the 3 kids are running around and there's stuff all over the floor, instead of blood, it's Legos on the floor. Just try it a few times and watch how your tone of voice and body posture change how your kids respond to you. I will tell you, as a guy, it's very addictive to me, because I was like, wait, I don't have to change my whole parenting style. I have to control myself, talk to him in that way. And then he changes and it kind of builds on itself. It's a really cool thing. So I go for simple things at first, simple wins. And if anybody listening needs help, you can email us. We've got a Calm Parenting Podcast is a podcast, and you can reach out directly to me. Tell me you heard me through Adam's podcast. I'll be glad to share, specific situations, some different things to do. But I appreciate what you're doing, helping other dads.
I really appreciate it. Grateful for you joining us. And guys, Kurt dropped some big time bombs and useful information. So as you said, just try to, implement 1 or 2 of these things next week, and slow, tiny movements forward to improve our dad game and see huge differences, hopefully for our entire life and our relationship with our kids. So I really appreciate it, Kurt, for joining us, and look forward to potentially talking again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Keep up the good work, my friend.
Thanks, Kurt.
You've been listening to the Dads Before Doctors podcast. Family men who are doctors rather than doctors who have families. In an evolving and ever fast-paced world, we cannot lose sight of our real priorities. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had fun. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And tell a friend about the show. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at dadsbeforedoctors.com. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email adam@dadsbeforedoctors.com. And find us on Facebook and Instagram at Dads Before Doctors. Remember, the host of this show is not your doctor, your coach, or your financial advisor. This show is strictly for entertainment. Till next time, this is Dads Before Doctors, signing off.